Hi, Erin. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Okay, for the sake of people that are already in, I like to start on time. Is that okay with you? You ready?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, great. So, hi, good afternoon to everybody. Good evening, actually. My name is Mirit Hoffman, and I'm elder law lawyer and a gerontologist. And my focus is helping mainly senior citizens when they reach significant junctions in their lives. We're talking about wills and enduring power of attorneys and financial agreements for second marriages. That does happen. And trusts and advise on estate and tax issues for people who have dual citizenships, US and IL. And with my broad exposure with this age group, I've realized that a lot of other topics that really should be put out there because not a lot of people know about them. So I've decided to open up this podcast called Golden Topics: Significant Crossroads for Seniors. It's around 2 years now. There's over 50 sessions, so it's worth listening to, where I host and discuss topics, very important topics, with other professionals that deal with issues that are important for senior citizens. And today we're going to be talking with Erin Farlich about Aliyah and financial planning for 55 up. And before I introduce Erin, I'd like to just state that Erin is a certified financial planner, CFP, a licensed investment advisor, and the founder of Green Peak Advisors. So without further ado, thank you very much, Erin, for being with me. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Mirit. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as Mirit said, I'm a certified financial planner. Most of my career has been in Israel, first in the investment management world and as a licensed investment advisor. And then I shifted and became a certified financial planner to basically broaden the scope in terms of how I can help predominantly Olim. I have a very broad mix of types of clients, those that have been in Israel for many years that may still maintain dual citizenship, people making Aliyah, um, people that are younger people to also older people as well who are looking more into retirement planning and figuring out a way to bridge the cross border type of issues that come up. And I'm able to help clients understand their current financial situation, create a financial plan to help them hit their shorter to longer term goals, and also help them implement that plan. Because I'm also a wealth manager, I manage portfolios as well, predominantly in the United States, and I'm happy to launch into about that service as well.
Well, I know that your services are super important. I have a lot of clients that are making Aliyah as they get older to be with their children who live here. And this is a very hot topic. So I'm really, really happy you're here. So let's just start. So why don't you start with like telling us what are the challenges people face when they're making Aliyah from a financial perspective?
Okay, so there are obviously a lot of financial things to talk about when you make Aliyah. Number one, obviously, in terms of lifestyle and cost of living, um, one has to understand, how that may change for them in Israel. It could be the cost of living actually goes up. We see that also when it comes to property prices as well. Being aware of the property market in Israel, how it's been, year on year going up dramatically, and trying to understand how can one make that work for themselves. Basically creating I would suggest creating a financial plan before making Aliyah, a detailed plan, forecasting your future expenses, and being able to understand how are you able to meet those expenses. You don't want to come here and then suddenly be up a creek and not be able to finance your retirement, so to speak, if that's where you are. And so I think number one, on the budgeting, on the understanding what your expenses is an important thing to think about. Um, Also, if we take U.S. taxpayers as an example, I can go into a little bit further. There are a lot of limitations in terms of what are our investable options in Israel, and it's very important to recognize that that is a challenge, but there are solutions. Um, and I think even before making Aliyah, um, one of the key things to think about is how do I surround myself with the right professionals even potentially before making Aliyah. So it could be making sure that I'm speaking to the right accountant, It could be working with a financial advisor, a financial planner. Those are types of individuals that can help you make an easy transition. Um, just as an example, I have a client that um, who actually lives in Israel, and she suddenly received a very large inheritance from a parent that passed away. And number one, in terms of understanding how to invest the money, that's one question. But B, technically speaking, many financial institutions do not want to work with, even if you're a U.S. taxpayer, want to work with someone who's not a resident anymore in the United States. And we see this coming, for the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, where your typical institutions you may have had a 30-year, 40-year relationship with, and suddenly, from a compliance perspective, they say, we can't work with you anymore, take your money and go somewhere else. And that's major challenge that people face, and it happens sometimes suddenly. You think that you have this relationship, and suddenly you get called up, and they say, we can't work with you anymore. And then you're feeling uncertain. You're feeling also overwhelmed by the fact that now you have to figure out another solution for your investments. And I would say one other thing to consider is, even if you're making Aliyah and you're, later years, so to speak, some people want to continue working. And it's very important to understand the local situation, meaning if you want to continue working, are you working as a independent contractor? Are you working for an Israeli entity? Are you, do you need to open up your own company? There are also a lot of different local laws that you have to comply with, whether it could be related to, like, for example, now clients of mine that literally just made Aliyah, both of them are actually working. One is working for an Israeli company, and suddenly, in his 50s, he's now by law has to comply with the pension laws and contribute to a pension, which is a bit silly because, in the end of the day, how much is that pension really going to be valued when he goes to take it? Probably not that much, but it's important that he's positioned correctly on the pensions. It's important that he understands what he's contributing towards and what does that pension provide him other than long-term retirement savings. The same thing is with his wife. His wife is also working, but she's set up in a different way. She's working with a payroll company. So all these different types of questions arise and should be addressed, I would say, before making, yeah.
Super important, super important. Some things that came to mind while you were saying it is, I know since the IRS voluntary disclosure issues, which I think was 2006, 2008, for instance, a lot of Swiss accounts are being closed and shut down by people who are American citizens. They just don't want to deal with it. I didn't realize that was also in America, so that's important. And regarding dealing with all this stuff before you make Aliyah, so important, because I have so many clients that live here and they have like a itty bitty little account here, and they have most of their investments in in America, but they live here. So instead of every month transferring, that whatever, $2,000, $3,000, it would make so much more sense if they actually have a bulk that's moved here. And then they can live off it. And sometimes just the pain of transferring money is a big deal. So if all these things, if you can sort that out before you actually move here with people that you trust, is super important. I think it's a really good idea.
Right. And I would even add, like, an example of a client that not American, but he lived in England for a while until they made Aliyah, and he works in pounds, works in that currency, and he had all his savings in pounds. And out of all the planning that I helped him do, one of the major things was that it gave him comfort and relief was actually on the currency. You brought up currency, was on the currency side because he was making transfers every month. All his savings were in pounds, and at the time, the pound was doing very, very poorly against the shekel. So his heart was like palpitating every time he'd go into his account 5 times a day. And he said to me, after everything you did, Aaron, one of the big thing that you helped me do was help me on the currency exchange, because I was able to help him negotiate with his bank to get a better rate. I was able to help him invest his money in shekels, so he didn't have that currency. He wasn't speculating on that currency. So there are also other things to consider. Do I want to take a portion of my money and actually put it into a shekel investment so that I have more currency, exposure to shekels? And these are all types of things when I'm talking about on the compliance end. for my clients, I'm able to, one of these things is I'm able to address it. Basically, I'm able to open an account for them in America so I can manage their 401k, their 403b, their traditional accounts, their, any type of account, so to speak. But they're using their Israeli address and they don't have a compliance problem there. And this way they don't have to use some sort of fake US address or maintain a US. I even know people that maintain an apartment in the United States just so that they have an address there, or they have their brother-in-law or sister-in-law, on their account. This way it's all in their name. They don't have to worry about anybody being on their account. And that helps solve that problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so if someone's retirement savings are in the US, how do they manage that in Israel? What strategies should they be considering, especially when we're talking about minimizing their tax liabilities? Can you help us with that a little bit?
So that's a really important question. Obviously, when you make Aliyah, you have a tax holiday on for 10 years, number one, and you definitely should. So if anybody, someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I'm making Aliyah. What should I do with my, investment portfolio?" So typically I'll say, first of all, you want to leave it where it is. You don't want to bring it over, because once you bring it over, then you're exposing yourself to Israeli taxes and also Israeli reporting. I believe that the exemption for reporting is ending, I think, in 2 years' time, like in 2026. So it's something to be aware of, meaning up until now, your tax holiday is on foreign income, and foreign gains and things of that sort. So, for example, let's say you were a lawyer and you wanted to continue working, and you were making, you're allocating a certain amount of money, income from being a lawyer, for your time in the United States, so you wouldn't have to report that to Israel. So now that law might be changing soon, and something to be aware of. But by the way, it's also important to understand that this tax holiday starts when you make Aliyah. So let's say you make Aliyah, but then for some reason decide to spend more time in the United States still, you're not fully here, that tax holiday is already starting to tick. So you should be aware of that. So definitely understand that the tax benefits that you have as an OLA is important. Understanding how Social Security works, if you're, about collecting Social Security, how does that work vis-a-vis, Israeli taxation? And for a lot of people, it's not taxed, but sometimes Bituach Leumi tries to get involved and offset things. So it's important to work with a good accountant that's going to help you, from that perspective. And I would say also, a lot of investment products, or a certain amount of investment products that you've been investing in, whether it's a Roth IRA account or other retirement types of accounts that you, up until now in the United States, you know how the taxes are going to be treated. In Israel, you could end up in a situation where you're thinking that you're not going to pay tax on the growth, but suddenly it's going to be taxed in Israel. And it's very important to work with an accountant that's going to help guide you. And it is a bit of a gray area, and it really depends on how accountants treat those different types of investment vehicles, and seeing whether that there are options to, avoid, obviously in a legal way, as much taxes as you can. Also looking at investments that may have different types of tax benefits, annuities and that kind of thing, as something to consider. So I'd say the bottom line is it's very important to work with a good accountant that's going to help you create the right framework from a tax perspective.
Absolutely, and it should be done beforehand. By the way, that tax holiday that they're talking about, that exists, about the 10 years that you don't have to pay taxes on your assets abroad. There's also the reporting holiday, and that reporting holiday is ending probably in 2026 for the 2025 tax year. So something to take into consideration also, that all you won't have to pay taxes, you will have to report your.
That was what I was alluding to, was that reporting point. Because, like, for example, let's say you were making, I don't know, let's say you were a lawyer and you're making $5 million and a year, and you allocated $4 million of that income when you're in America. So then you wouldn't have to, in theory, pay Israeli tax. So they want to avoid all these kind of quote unquote games,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
they're trying to. So yeah, so it's definitely very important to understand, to create, especially if you're moving into the retirement side, And I would say it also very much ties into legacy and succession planning and working with Mirit or someone who's going to help you understand the different nuances on both sides. In the United States, on estate taxes and Israeli estate taxes, and creating a plan for gifting and legacy. That all also should be built in to the plan. I'm not saying you have to do all of that in the before making Aliyah, but it's certainly you should be working with somebody who's going to help you, create the right plan.
Absolutely. I think you're right. Like you said at the beginning, you should really make sure that you have like a cushion of people that will, professionals that'll be able to help you in various things to just make sure that you have those, not even in advance, but sort of online to be able to navigate whatever it is that you're going to need to do. Absolutely. Give us a little bit about the insurance world. How does that work in Israel? Why is it so important to understand the tools to mitigate a risk? And um, is it advisable? Is it bichlal a possibility to maintain policies that one has already in the US?
So insurance is actually an area that I work, that I do a lot of work with for my clients because I believe it's really part of financial wellness. It's not just about looking at investments, and it's about really understanding. Just like you have a business where you have you have your expenses and your income, you also have your risk management. And when it comes to insurance, there are different types of insurance that I focus on with my clients. I'm not talking about the car insurance and the home insurance. We're talking more about life insurance and health insurance. As you know, when you make Aliyah, you have access to socialized medicine. You have access to the Kupat Olim, so to speak, system.
Right.
And in the Kupat Cholim, there are a few different levels, right? So you have the lowest level, you have a medium level, and typically every Kupat Cholim has the highest level. A lot of times Olim or Americans specifically think they need the highest level, also because they're looking at up until now how much their insurance costs have been in the United States, and they think it's a joke, even the highest level. But I would actually say that many times you don't actually need the highest level in Israel. It doesn't add so much value. You should look at the what you get from it and decide whether or not something that's important to you. A lot of times the benefits of the highest level are really related to alternative medicines, coverages, treatments. It could be related to laser eye surgeries, things of that sort. So you actually don't need it in terms of mitigating risks. So what I would suggest though is one of the major things to get even before life insurance in many instances is private health insurance. And what does private health insurance provide? So actually, private health insurance is a very broad thing, but you can really customize the policies towards your needs. From my perspective as a financial planner, I really want to make sure that you're covered on catastrophes and major issues. So, for example, it could be if you need chas v'shalom, a transplant, or you need a medication that's not included in the solid briut that could cost upwards of 20, 30, 40,000 shekels a month. So for that, you need private health insurance. And obviously private health insurance, you can also get additional types of things like private consultations, coverage for that with a low payment. You can also, and so there's a whole bunch of other things you can add to your policy. But from my perspective, it's very important to know that you have for the large stuff coverage. It's not necessarily offered. I believe that above the age of 69, it's not, you can't even necessarily get it, this type of thing, but it's something very important to look into for your kids, at least, also to make sure that they have the right coverage. So private health insurance is something, and I'm not a licensed insurance agent. I work with another partner that does that for me, but it's very important to make sure that you look into that. Another type of insurance is what's called CUD insurance. And that is actually, you can't buy this type of insurance anymore. CUD means basically one of two situations. Either you're cognitively, not here, you may either have Alzheimer's or that kind of thing, or dementia, or if you're in a situation where you can't do daily tasks, for yourself, feeding yourself, clothing, bathing and that kind of thing, then you're considered CUD. And the only real coverage you have for CUD insurance is through the Kupat Cholim at the moment. You can't. They used to have private policies, but now you can't get that anymore. And what that gives you right now is something in the vicinity of 5,000 shekels a month for 5 years, so 60 payments. You have to weigh whether or not it, when you're younger, it's very, very cheap, and even for children, it's free until the age of 18. So you have to see whether or not the cost benefit is there for you. It could be that you don't need this insurance, you have enough assets and other investments that it's not even relevant for. And that actually goes for the same thing regarding life insurance, for example. It could be that you're in a stage where you don't need life insurance. Life insurance, first of all, is a requirement. Typically, when you buy an apartment and you have a mortgage, they'll ensure that you also get a life insurance policy out on the mortgage. Um, it's not always necessary, but in many instances, you need that. When it comes to life insurance and what Miri was talking about in terms of, well, should I maintain my US policies? Should I get new Israeli policies? So typically, US policies are going to cover you whether you're in the United States or abroad if something happens. And again, you have to, I would say every case, it's on a case by case basis, and you should look at the actual numbers. Had a client that actually came to me to review this situation. He was being pressured by an insurance agent in the United States to get a whole life policy, which for many reasons I don't like in general. But and I was able to help him sit down and look at the whole picture together and see what makes the most sense. And actually, in that instance, it made more sense for him to maintain some cheaper term life insurance. And for his own, and also help him bring it down from the amount that he really wanted to what I felt was actually appropriate for him. And the same thing is true, by the way. Just a quick example where working and optimizing can help. One of the things that you get from your pension in Israel, if you're working in Israel and contributing to a pension fund, is you actually get life insurance built into the pension. Meaning, if you pass away, your spouse will then receive life insurance. So I have a number of clients that also have U.S. policies. So what we did was we basically, instead of diverting some of those monthly payments that go to the life insurance component of the pension, we were able to take that money and divert it to their long-term retirement savings, and because they already have other life insurance policies from the U.S. So there are sometimes adjustments that can be made.
I think it's great. I think it's great that you can sort of zoom out and look at everything from above, and then you have a much better perspective, whereas the person who's like living with the stuff doesn't necessarily see everything that you see because he's in it and he sees just stuff. I think
But
it's
I think that the holistic approach really helps because if you went to an insurance agent in Israel, for example, they're only going to see their piece of the puzzle, and if you go to an insurance agent in the United States, they're only going to see from their point of view. And what I can do is I can look at everything, the investment side, and both the U.S. side, if it's U.S. or somewhere else, and the Israel side. We can price out, policies and see which makes the most sense. There's an objectivity there that I think helps make in terms of making the right overall decision for
absolutely.
my
I
clients.
totally agree. I totally agree. What about investment opportunities? Are there any investment opportunities one should consider when they're in Israel?
So, like I mentioned, I think especially if you're making Aliyah, so obviously you want to take advantage of the tax holiday, number one, um, and also the IRS has made it very difficult for U.S. taxpayers. If I'm talking about specifically U.S. taxpayers in terms of what we can invest in or what's recommended to invest in, I'm sure a lot of people have already researched and understand this thing called a PFIC, passive in a foreign investment company, which basically boils down to any foreign fund would be considered that type of vehicle, and it's not recommended to invest in from a taxation perspective, from a reporting perspective, which really leads us to few investment options in Israel. That being said, I think that there are some options for if you want shekel exposure, if you want to buy real estate, if you want to get exposure to real estate through loans and through debt, debt type of investments, you have those available. I think that you can manage an emergency fund, which I always recommend clients having. Liquid, and there are shekel investments. You can put together a small shekel portfolio also, with Israeli bonds and Israeli stocks. So there are some investment options, but in terms of if you want to just maintain, your typical stock market, bond market, global exposures through U.S. listed funds, I don't see a huge benefit in bringing anything over to Israel.
That's
Because in any event, you'd have to buy those similar types of funds in an Israeli brokerage.
okay. Well, that's important. That's really important. So we're coming to the nearly end of our conversation, which went really, really quickly. But why don't you give us some financial tips that you can, for prospective Olim before they move here to Israel?
Okay, so I sort of already alluded to. I mean, developing a real written financial plan is important. Um, Really doing the research and understanding where you're living, what your cost of living is going to be. What are potential, forecasted cost of living for the next 10, 15, 20 years, even projecting out. I do that a lot with my clients. I project um, their future, kind of expenses and build them out a cash flow forecast. Um, I think that making sure that you have your financial institutions in order, meaning I also spoke about this previously about making sure that, your financial advisor can still work with you, making sure that you're banking, and if they can't, then finding someone else like myself or there are other investment, advisors out there. But um, the other thing is making sure that you can transfer money without having any limitations. You'd be very surprised about how many people come here and their account is closed, it's been dormant, they're not able to transact, they can't access their money. A client of mine flew me into New York for 2 days this year so that I can help him deal with the power of attorney on his account. Okay, he had no idea how much, he couldn't access his money, he didn't remember his login information. The bank, Chase, I'm talking about a huge, JP Morgan Chase, wouldn't talk to him. um, and he had, he needed someone to physically go. He wasn't in good health. He's not in good health. And I physically went into the bank for him and basically got power of attorney on his account so that I could help him. So banks are becoming more difficult. So it's super important, I would say, to make sure that you can make wires internationally without needing to be there physically. If you need to put someone on your account and have power of attorney there, in case, that's also something to consider. I'm not saying that you want to have, your family members all over your account, but, as an emergency, it's a good thing to do if to have someone on your account who can access things for you, who can help you in the case that you're here. We saw this happen a lot with Corona, where people couldn't travel back and forth.
Right.
And so I would say making sure your financial institutions are in order, beginning to surround yourself with good financial professionals, whether it's, if you're looking for a property, making sure that you have a mortgage consultant to speak to, real estate broker, financial planner, accountants, insurance professionals, those types of people that can help you. It's a new banking system, it's a new financial system. And it's good to do the research and know, how things work even beforehand. Um, and yeah, I mean, I would say that, and like I think having a good person like Mirit to help on the succession planning end is also super important, as well, because suddenly now you need to make sure that you have an Israeli will, and during power of attorney, and those type of things, set up for you in Israel.
Right. No, those are all very, really good tips. So how can people get in touch with you, Aaron?
So I have a website, www.greenpeakadvisors.com. Email address, you can feel free to email me, aaron@greenpeakadvisors.com. The phone number is 054-320-8077. Um, and so any of those ways, WhatsApp me, email me, I'm happy to answer any questions, happy to also just get on a short call with you. I don't charge for the initial call at all. Happy to, try and help you as much as I can. Because that's the real goal, is to help people making Aliyah, making it smoother for them. And obviously happy to help you when you get here as well.
So thank you so much. That was super, super, super important conversation. I'm really happy we had it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Aaron, again. And for all you people, don't forget to stay, first of all, stay safe, please. And looking forward to seeing you in our next live. Have a good evening. Bye bye.